All right, this is the content for the first week of the practice room. It will be a little bit different because it was more interactive when I delivered it in person to the group, but I wanted to record the main parts that we covered so that anyone can use them even if they were not there. And the first thing to say is that the goal of this initiative is not to make you better teachers. I know that you are excellent teachers. And I also know that you work hard on teaching. The goal of this initiative is for the fact that you are a good teacher who works hard at it to actually feel good. So what I see and what I used to see in myself and what I see in all of my colleagues is people who work really hard and are good teachers, but consistently feel like they're probably not doing enough, probably not doing it the right way, probably could be doing more, could be getting better results for their students, etc. So we have a huge amount of skill and commitment and success, actually, I'm willing to bet, and a low amount of satisfaction in our own efforts. So that is what this initiative is targeted at, how to make teaching actually feel as good as you are at it. Okay, let's go. Let us go once I share the slides. Okay, here we are. Excellent. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the framework that we bring to teaching, how we understand what we're doing and what goes wrong. Okay, so what seems to be the problem when teaching doesn't work? I think that we tend to respond in these four categories. And when I asked people in the room, they all offered like it was completely predicted by this slide. So somehow we didn't prepare right. Somehow we didn't execute right. Our students are not prepared or they're not executing properly. Or the institution is being unhelpful in some way. There's like institutional friction. And whenever teaching doesn't work, we put it down to one of these four categories. So how do we try to solve these problems? What do we do to actually address the things that we think are going wrong? Well, when it's somehow non-ideal prep, we try to prepare differently. We do this kind of vague sort of vibes-based triage, like maybe I should do more, maybe I should do less, maybe I should give them quotes, maybe I shouldn't, right? We're always trying to solve for a situation that we aren't entirely sure what went wrong. I often think of teaching as an experiment without a control group, because even if you have two groups, even if you're teaching the same thing to two different groups of students, you still don't have a control group, right? It's just two simultaneous experiments. Somehow we did not execute properly, so we try to run the discussion differently. We try to call on students differently. We have all of these various ideas of what we could do in the moment. And often they're much vaguer than I could control the discussion differently. There are things like, I should be more authoritative or I should be more entertaining that we don't know how to solve for really usually at all. If it's unprepared students, this can feel like something out of our control entirely. So we may solve for it by getting them to look at smaller passages or whatever. But in general, I think that the thing we mostly do when we think it's the students is complain, which makes perfect sense because complaining is what we do when something's bothering us and we feel powerless to change it. Same thing with the institution. I think the tendency to just focus on complaining here is even bigger because we actually have more leverage with the students usually than we do with the institution. Okay, so what are some of the results of trying to solve the problem of teaching not going the way we want it to using this analysis, using this diagnosis? So some of the results that I saw in myself and I see in others are our preparation grows without necessarily getting us toward what we want. When our teaching doesn't go well, we're often not sure why. We try to improve, but it doesn't feel like there are clear levers to pull. So we just have this vague idea, as what one person said, kind of based on vibes, that there are like, that we should get better, but what does that really mean and how are we doing it? We often find ourselves griping, so like about students or the institution, but underneath, we're usually most critical of ourselves. We really believe that despite the students not being prepared and despite the institution being unhelpful, if we were somehow better, we would be getting the results that would feel good in the classroom. So as I said, we mostly wind up evaluating on vibes, like did they seem engaged? Were they into it? And as everyone knows, you cannot really tell necessarily when students are or are not into it. I'm sure you've all had the experience where you thought some student was really not liking the class, and then they come to office hours and they were like, I really loved when you blah, blah, blah. Or, you think a group is great, and then, you find out later that they were all bitching about the reading or whatever. And then also we take our lead from the students. So we think how we are doing is we read how our teaching is going off of the student reaction. And although there is some value in their reaction, and I'm not saying we're going to discount it, I do think that we wind up having no other measure of what's happening in the classroom except their reaction. And this can be a problem when sometimes learning involves suffering, right? Like, not to put too fine a point on it, but sometimes the students may be resentful and having to work harder than they want. And then 3 weeks later, they feel amazing. Like, oh, I'm so glad we did that. Now I finally get it. But if we're judging moment by moment on their reaction, how it's going, we can't hold the line for a result that might be worth it, even if the interim doesn't feel great to them. That's just one example of how taking our lead from the students can wind up being a bit of a problem. Okay, so I think that the biggest result from all of this is that when we think that these are the causes of teaching not going well, and these are the ways we try to solve for it, our teaching becomes absorbed into what I call a deficit mindset, which is basically where we look around our lives and the world and our jobs and our classroom, and we constantly focus on what is not right. What's not right with us, what's not right with them, what could be better. And there are all kinds of reasons that we do this. I mean, for one thing, we're trained to look for holes in arguments or procedures or whatever. So there's a human negativity bias anyway, and then you bring our sort of critical analytical training into it, and that's going to ramp that up. But we are also in a profession that expects us to do more than we can actually do. So in a certain sense, we are always in deficit. And if we don't have a way to turn off some of those expectations, at least inside where we judge ourselves, then we are always going to feel like we're not good enough. So we know we're doing a lot, but we low-key feel like we're not doing it well enough. And maybe if we worked harder or better or prepped more or prepped differently, et cetera, it would be better. So as I said at the start, this basically means that we are spending a lot of time doing something we're good at, but vaguely and consistently feeling like we could be better, and it's probably not quite good enough. And this means that something that is like a skill and in many ways a pleasure, it becomes this kind of low awareness drain on our energy and sense that we are doing well enough at our jobs. And that is unfortunate and does not have to exist. All right. So I think that we can start to shift this pretty substantially if we think about the problem when teaching doesn't go well otherwise. Because when we conceive the problem in a different framework, the solutions and the results change as well. So this is what I'm going to offer you as my framework. You can try it out, test it, see if it works for you. This is what I believe the problem is. We do not have a clear minimum baseline goal that is for us, not for the students, not for the institution, for what we want to happen in the classroom that will signify to us that was a good class, right? So we do not have any way besides like vibes or how the students are acting or, what so-and-so said in our office hours to know if it's going well. And this means we can't hold the line for ourselves when some things went well and some things went poorly. We don't have any metric to judge against. So because of the deficit mindset, we're just pulled into seeing it negatively. Okay. And without a clear minimum baseline goal, we do not know what to do when we're prepping. We don't know how to triage every possible thing we could do to prep, and especially to prep better. because we don't know exactly what we're trying to accomplish. We don't evaluate in a focused way. So without a metric to tell if it's going well or not that is for us, we wind up evaluating vaguely based on vibes, but also based on negative mindset. And then and deficit mindset rather, and we don't have the tools to resist deficit mindset. So even if we do 1, 2, and 3 here, as I'm going to talk about, in a really focused way, our brain will still talk back to us and tell us that there is a problem. Our brain will still talk back to us and tell us there's a problem, and we have to be able to actually resist that and say, no, I have this minimum baseline, and that's what we're going to evaluate against. Okay. So, without a minimum baseline goal, as I said, we are going to wind up really focused on whatever is experientially happening. And so what I do for myself, what I have chosen as my minimum baseline goal is I want students to have an experience in the classroom at least twice in every seminar where they are thinking across a gap, where I am setting up a problem or a contradiction or some kind of like question that is difficult to answer with relation to a text. I am setting it up for them and guiding them and inviting them to think across that gap and synthetically find the answer themselves. And I chose this because this is what I think good teaching is for me. And it is what is also most satisfying for me. So this is why I said that we don't choose a minimum baseline goal for us. We often choose it based on what the students want, what the institution expects, what we learned in teaching prep, wherever it came from. We usually have never authorized ourselves to ask, what do I think makes a good class? Where is the overlap between something I think is really good for the students and something I fucking love when it happens, right? And I really think both of those things are important, because if you're going to spend a good portion of your life doing something, you should make sure that you are focused on an aspect of that thing that is really satisfying to you. And that is going to benefit not just the students, but you. And I also think that when we don't have this minimum baseline goal, we don't have as much leadership as we really need in the classroom, right? Students will believe what is good teaching students will believe they're receiving good teaching if we really believe it. We teach them what to expect in the classroom. We teach them this is important. That feeling you have when your brain is working across the gap, that is the liveness of your intellect. And you will have that whatever happens in this classroom is gone. You will remember that feeling of the aliveness of your brain. But that's just for me. For you, it might be something else. It might be when you see the student actually understand like why Shakespeare does X, Y, or Z, or what it actually felt like to live in the 14th century, or why this one discovery in physics like changed everything. Like whatever it is, what is good teaching for you? What do you enjoy? Where do those things overlap? And what is the minimum amount? This is important. What is the minimum amount that needs to happen in a class for you to consider it successful? So this really should be something that is like a slice. So you'll notice that I did not say that I need my entire seminar to be my students thinking across a gap. It's 2 times. If I can make that happen, that was a good class. That is my minimum baseline. Okay. And then if I have that, then my execution can be tied to that goal. So I can think in preparation and also in how I am setting up the class and how I am running the class. How am I going to meet that goal? So it gives me a focus in my preparation. It gives me a focus in how I'm running the class. It helps me triage all the possible good things that could happen in a classroom between me and the students in this material. It helps me triage that down and see the forest for the trees. When it doesn't happen, or when the class felt I can actually think about, well, did I get those two things? Did that happen for them? If not, why not? It happened last week, it didn't happen this week. Did I do something different? Is the material, maybe the groups weren't working, right? It gives me something to solve for that is clear. And then if I'm like, it didn't quite, I could have been better, sorry, I'm moving down the list without highlighting. If I have a class that I was like, did it really? And then I think, well, did I hit my minimum baseline goal? And I can find that I did, then that's when I need to resist the deficit mindset and say, okay, brain, it wasn't perfect. We got what we came for though, and so did the students. Moving on. Okay, so this is the practice that I would suggest for starting to shift into this other way of thinking. So first, identify your minimum baseline goal. And it should be something that feels very satisfying for you when it happens. And it should be limited to something that can happen in some slice of the seminar, not the entire time. Okay, so that is what I've already covered. But here are the other parts that are equally important. Do not skip these other parts. Find all the reasons this is your goal. So you will have heard me when I was talking about thinking across the gap, this is the feeling of intellectual aliveness. You'll never forget this. You'll never lose this. Like, those are some of the reasons that I have for this goal. So find all the reasons it's your goal for you, but also find all the reasons it will benefit the students for you to focus on this goal. Because your brain will try to say like, oh, but like in my case, my brain could say, oh, but what about the coverage? And are they really learning X? And it's like, no, this is why this is the goal. And then triage your prep based on this goal. So reflect on how you prep and think, which parts of this are getting me closer to my goal, to my minimum baseline, and which aren't? What is the core and what is extraneous and just sort of nice to have? And then how can I approach my prep? Like, what is the minimum baseline prep that will advance my minimum baseline goal? At that point, you want to surface any deficit mindset thoughts about this minimum baseline goal. So just write down, you can just put at the top of a piece of paper or whatever, I'm worried about my minimum baseline goal because, and just like write down all the things your brain is telling you about why it not be enough, or you can't do it, or the students won't like it, whatever. And then challenge those thoughts. So after you list the thoughts, write down a reason why each of them might be wrong. And this is the work of challenging the deficit mindset. Okay, now this is also really crucial, and I wanted to keep this under 20 minutes, so I'm not going to go. This could deserve more teaching, and I might do a separate video. But identify the thoughts that drive the minimum baseline goal. So here's how to do this. Imagine that you are knocking your minimum baseline goal out of the park. Like, you are feeling satisfied. It is happening. The students are in it. It's all firing. What were you thinking when you prepared that would help you create that experience? What are you thinking before and after the seminar, if that's the case? And also, what are you thinking during it? But in my experience, we don't exactly think about our experience of teaching while we're having it. It's sort of like what happened to me while I was gone. But during works too. Okay. So for me, for example, when I'm preparing and I'm looking for those gaps I'm going to help them think across, I'm thinking things like, this is going to blow their minds, or they'll never have thought about it this way, or this is going to be so cool for them, or I love thinking about this. They're going to have fun too. This is going to be so interesting to think about together. Those are some of the things I'm thinking when I'm preparing. And that's going to help me like stay aligned with the minimum baseline goal, but it also is going to make the preparation feel interesting and satisfying in the way that I want the class to. Okay, so that is what I recommend. And if you are in a term, my people are in a term right now. The people that are doing this with me are in a term right now. But I suggest trying this out. So Maybe do a little reflecting on how you usually evaluate your teaching, how you usually try to address problems, and then try this out. Identify minimum baseline goal and see what it is like to triage for it, to prep for it, and to run your classroom with that front of mind, and to show up with conviction and authority where you communicate to the students, I know exactly what needs to happen here because I know what my goal is, and you're going to find it a really good goal too. All right. That's it, everyone. Thank you. Bye. Oh, and yes, if you have questions, you can get in touch with me. I'll leave my email. Okay. Bye.